Okay, it's the 15th of March 2026. Welcome back for another episode of my weekly market series. Let's get straight into it. So I guess a good place to start is crude oil. This is obviously a hot topic at the minute. There's a lot going on in the world with the geopolitical tensions in Iran and with the United States and Israel, essentially a war kicking off. It's causing the oil prices to go a little bit crazy because of the bottleneck in the Strait of Hormuz. I managed to pick off a long position later in the week. I think it was around Thursday. The price has not quite achieved 1 hour in profit yet. Stop loss is just over 600 ticks away. So I'm about 450 ticks in profit. See how this one plays out this week. Hopefully bring the stop loss up to break even in the next day or two to get risk off on this one and see where this one ends up. Aluminium has a very high energy manufacturing cost, and I expected this one to also move in line with crude, which it did. There was an awesome long position. I believe this one happened the entry was on Tuesday off the 4-hour chart. Really nice extension to the upside, but unfortunately, because I was quite unwell at the early half of this week, I wasn't able to capitalize on this. But I just wanted to show that this trade worked out really well. Soy beans is another really good mention because last week's video I had it picked as a potential nice long, and that played out again on Tuesday. But this, unfortunately, is another trade that I missed out on because I was really unwell early this week. But it made a new higher high on the 4-hour chart. Beautiful pullback and a continuation. Sadly, I had to sit out on this one. Another big mover from last week is the US energy sector stocks. They made a nice pullback to the 20 moving average on the 4-hour chart and then a new higher high. Thankfully, I was able to capitalize on this one later in the week. I managed to pick ConocoPhillips stock and got a nice entry. Price is well past 1 hour in profit, so I'll be bringing the stop loss up to break even and see where this stock goes. Okay, moving on to this week. As I do every weekend, I run my market report. It helps me filter out a massive watch list, reduce it down to some nicely trending assets based on technical data and based on commitment of traders report data. I combine those two elements and generate this report. This week, it has highlighted several assets that are worthy of a closer look. So let's get straight into that. Now, interestingly, my report for the S&P 500 and the Russell 2000 has identified a build-up of large speculators going net long on these two assets. But looking at the charts, these are very much still quite bearish. So I'm not looking to go long on these until I see at least a 4-hour make a new higher high and a pullback. At the moment, the chart doesn't look ready for long positions, so I'm going to sit out and wait to see how this plays out over the next few weeks. Gasoline, which is downstream from crude oil. Crude is obviously moving strongly. We've already talked about that, and it's causing gasoline to move quite strongly as well. On the 4-hour, it made a really nice pullback and has continued, is currently looking potentially to make a new higher high. We'll see. Let's see if we can capitalize on that. If we get some kind of a pullback and then continuation, that would be fantastic. Cocoa, which has a build-up of net long positions on the commitment of traders report, which is interesting because the weekly and the daily charts are still very much bearish. But if we look very closely, we can see that the 4-hour has potentially flipped bullish. We had lower lows, lower highs, lower lows and lower highs. And then we've got this big push to the upside. Price has nicely moved back to the 20 moving average as well, which is exactly what I like to see. We've had this beautiful pullback. Now, if we get some strong candles here, I'll be looking for long positions on cocoa over the next few days. Wheat is another asset that my market report has identified having a build-up of net long positions on the commitment of traders report. Now, looking at the chart, we can clearly see that the weekly and the daily are moving really nicely. The 4-hour has done a really nice pullback to the 20 moving average, but it's a little bit on the choppy side. This is not the clean textbook price action that I like to see. Platinum is another asset that my market report has identified for potential shorts. The chart is really messy. If we look at the daily and the 4 hour, it's just all over the place. This isn't the kind of chart that I like to trade. So I think I'll be sitting out of this. Finally, my market report has identified that bonds are potentially worth shorting over the next few weeks. Commitment of traders report shows that large speculators have built up net short positions. The narrative makes sense because at the moment, the Fed will be probably looking to keep rates hiked, and inflation is also up due to crude prices. To offset against these higher costs, investors are going to demand higher yields, and that's what's pushing these bond prices down and yields up. So there are potentially some really good shorts that we could capitalize on in these assets. But as usual, I'll need to wait for a pullback and a continuation. So I'll be watching these closely over the next week or two to see if they give that price action that I like to see. Last week, I mentioned that I expected the Dixie to continue rising in value. The narrative being that the dollar is considered a safe haven asset, and also with inflation fears, we expect the dollar to potentially continue rising, which it did this week. It did a pullback and a huge push to the upside. If we look at some of the USD pairs, we can clearly see that there were some fantastic opportunities. The one I like specifically is the US JPY trade that happened. I think it was on Monday, Tuesday last week, which was a beautiful pullback to the 20 moving average and then a continuation. Again, as I was unwell, I was unable to capitalize on this, but this would have been a fantastic trade. We'll wait to see if we get any kind of pullback and continuation. Last but not least, a quick mention around stocks. Now, I've started more actively trading US stocks, and my filtering process has identified that specific sectors are worthy of tracking very closely because of money flowing in and out of certain sectors. At the moment, energy and I believe utilities are very strong. We've already talked about energy sector and the fact that I'm already in one trade at the minute with ConocoPhillips. There are also a couple of other stocks that I'm currently watching within the energy sector, but they are at the minute quite extended. So again, I need a pullback. With regards to utilities, there are some fantastic stocks that I've identified through my filtering process, but unfortunately a lot of them are quite extended to the upside. So we'll be looking for pullbacks and continuations, which we'll have to keep an eye on for the next few days. That's it for this week. I'll catch you on the next one.